The scream cut through the quiet of Brindle Hollow, just as the sun slipped behind the pines. Martha Hale froze on the back porch, dish towel in her hands, as Duke, her family's loyal German shepherd, bounded toward the house with something clamped between his jaws. At first she thought it was another river stone, one of those smooth gray ones he loved carrying home. But the shape was wrong. Too narrow, too dark, too human. And when Duke dropped at her feet, mud slick along its edges. Every breath she had abandoned her at once. Something awful had happened in the woods. The last of the evening light trembled across the Hale property, flickering through the branches like nervous fingers. Brindle Hollow wasn't big enough for street lamps or late-night traffic, and on most evenings the silence felt comforting, soft, steady, predictable. Tonight, it crawled. Martha Hale knelt automatically, even as her stomach tightened. Duke's tail wagged with the open pride of a dog bringing home a prize. His fur was speckled with pine needles, his paws dark with river mud, as if he'd run clear across the valley just for this offering. "Boy," Martha whispered, "what did you find?" The object lay between them like a secret, wrapped in mud, tangled with a few strands of long black hair. It was unmistakably a piece of someone's scalp. Not fresh. Dry blood clung to the edges like rust. But not old either. Her voice left her. Her pulse didn't. The screen door slammed behind her. "Martha?" It was Daniel, her husband, tall, broad-shouldered, always carrying the energy of a man 2 seconds away from pacing. "Why were you yelling for her?" His words stopped when he saw what lay on the porch. Duke, oblivious to the horror, nudged the object with a soft grunt, as if encouraging them to take it. Daniel muttered a curse under his breath. "Jesus." "From who?" Martha's throat tightened. "Call Sheriff Lane." Daniel hesitated. It was a tiny pause, but she caught it. She always caught it. Daniel didn't like Sheriff Lane, not since a dispute last winter. Some argument about trespassing lines, missing livestock, and who owed who an apology. Daniel never fully explained it. He never fully explained anything when it came to Lane. "Dan," her voice was sharp. "Call him." Another beat of hesitation. Then he nodded and went inside. Duke sat next to Martha, leaning into her leg as if sensing her unease. She rested a shaky hand on his back, eyes fixed on the scalp. A drizzle began, almost gentle at first. The raindrops made the muddy hair glisten. Somewhere far beyond the tree-line, something moved, a faint, dragging sound. Duke's ears perked. Martha's heart hammered. She whispered, "Not tonight. Not now." Sheriff Elias Lane arrived 20 minutes later in his dusty cruiser, the headlights slicing through the mist. A man carved from years of disappointment and long drives on lonely roads. He stepped onto the porch with his hat pulled low and his jaw tight. He didn't greet them. He didn't ask permission. He crouched beside the scalp. "Dog brought this?" he asked. Martha nodded. Lane scratched his beard with slow, deliberate movements. "You touch it." "No," she said quickly. "I just saw it." Lane stood. Where was the dog before this? Daniel answered from behind her. "Down near the South Ridge, I think. He goes there sometimes to chase squirrels." Something flickered in Lane's eyes. Recognition? Worry? Lane glanced at Duke, who wagged his tail as if expecting praise. "Sheriff." Martha said, "Does this belong to someone from town?" Lane didn't reply. Instead, he pulled out his flashlight and scanned Duke with methodical sweep. Mud caked the dog's underbelly. A smear of something darker, maybe blood, maybe just wet soil, clung to the fur near his collar. Lane's voice dropped. "This isn't from an animal." The words hit like cold wind. Martha swallowed hard. "Then someone is hurt." Lane straightened, expression tightening. "Maybe, or worse." "Worse," she echoed. Lane's gaze drifted toward the tree line. "Couple hikers went missing near your property line last week. Storm washed out their trail. We've been searching." Daniel stiffened. "You didn't tell us." "You didn't ask," Lane said flatly. A shadow tightened between the two men, old resentment resurfacing like a bruise. Martha stepped forward. "Sheriff, what do you need from us?" Lane hesitated, and that scared her more than anything else tonight. I need to follow Duke's trail. He clipped a marker on the scalp, slid it into an evidence bag, and turned to Daniel. You staying or coming? Daniel crossed his arms. I'll go. Good, Lane said, though he didn't sound pleased. Martha stepped closer. I want to come too. No, both men said. Lane softened his tone just a fraction. Mrs. Hale, we need someone home in case there's more to find. She hated the way he said it. Hated that he wasn't telling her everything. Daniel grabbed his jacket. We'll be back soon. But Martha saw something in his eyes, a flicker of unease buried under the stubborn set of his jaw. Something he wasn't saying. When they disappeared into woods, Duke remained by Martha's side, whining softly as if he wanted to follow. She knelt beside him. You already showed us enough. Yet part of her wanted to grab a flashlight and go after them. Daniel had been distant for weeks, restless and snappish, sometimes disappearing late at night for reasons he never clearly explained. And now a scalp discovered on their land. The rain thickened into steady drops. Duke licked her wrist. She forced herself to breathe, but somewhere deep inside, a thought struck her. Daniel hesitated when she said to call Lane. Daniel didn't look surprised by what Duke brought back. Daniel knew the South Ridge better than anyone, and Daniel had secrets. The woods swallowed Dan and Lane in a damp, uneasy darkness. Duke's tracks were easy to follow at first. Deep prints pressed into the mud, weaving through brush and fallen branches. Lane spoke first. Funny he picked tonight. What? To bring something like that home. Daniel stiffened. Are you implying something? Just saying dogs bring home what they find. They don't always pick the day by chance. Daniel walked faster. Your job is to find whoever lost that damn thing, not accuse my dog. Lane didn't argue. He simply lifted his flashlight and inspected the branches above them. Tracks split here. One set, Duke's, veered left, following the slope toward the river. Another, much fainter set of footprints, human, led right. Lane crouched. These are fresh. Daniel's voice tightened. Maybe from yesterday's search party. No, Lane's tone was certain. These are smaller, lighter, and heading away from where the hikers were last seen. Daniel's breath hitched. Then who? A loud snap cracked behind them. Both men spun. Flashlight beams cut through the trees. Nothing, but Daniel's hand trembled slightly. Lane noticed. You nervous about something? No. You sure? Daniel glared at him. I'm fine. Lane held his stare another moment, then turned and followed the human footprints. Daniel exhaled shakily. Back at the house, Martha waited on the porch, arms wrapped around herself. The night pressed down heavy, the wind carrying whispers from the pines. Duke paced restlessly. A subtle, quiet urge nudged her. Something she'd heard in true crime videos she watched during late-night dishwashing. If you're hearing this, and stories like these keep you thinking long after they end, stick around. For whatever comes next, a simple sentiment. Nothing loud, nothing forced. Just a moment of connection. Soft as a breath. She exhaled, steadying herself. Somewhere in the distance, Duke froze, ears high. A scream tore through the forest. Not Daniel's. Not Lane's. Someone else. Someone Martha didn't recognize. The sound cut off too fast, like a hand had been clamped over her mouth. Duke growled, low and bitter. The forest went dead silent. Martha whispered, Oh God, what's happening out there? But the real terror hadn't reached her porch yet. It was still making its way through the woods, bleeding, dragging itself forward, guided by the faint glow of fallen flashlight, carrying with it the reason Duke had brought home a human scalp, a truth that would rip open every secret this family had buried. And one man Martha trusted knew more than he ever admitted. The scream still echoed in Martha's mind long after the forest turned silent. It wasn't the sharp cry of someone startled. It was deeper. Raw panic torn from a throat in mortal danger. Duke bolted toward the trees, but Martha grabbed his collar before he leapt over the porch steps. No, she whispered, her voice barely holding. Not without Daniel. Not without them. Duke growled low, ears pinned back, muscles tense like a coiled spring. His instincts fought her grip. He wanted to run, to help, to protect. But all Martha could picture was that scalp, wet, mud-caked, inhumanly cold, and the scream that followed. She swallowed hard. "Please don't leave me." Duke paused, sensing her distress, and finally eased back. She exhaled slowly, not realizing she'd been holding her breath. A faint glow flickered between the trees. A flashlight, moving, jerking, falling. Martha's heart lurched. Daniel. No answer. Daniel Hale wasn't thinking about Lane or his wife, or any of the lies he carried into their marriage. His mind focused on a cold sensation creeping down the back of his neck, a mixture of sweat and rain, and a dark trail they were following deeper into the woods. Lane crouched again, running thick fingers through a patch of disturbed leaves. "Blood," he said simply. Daniel leaned closer, despite himself. A smear of dark red streaked across a rotting log. Still tacky. He felt something shift uneasily inside him. Animal. Lane stood. Look at the pattern. The blood curved, sweeping downward in a thin arc. Not splattered. Not clawed. Dragged. Lane clicked off his flashlight and let the darkness swell between them. Something, or someone, was pulled through here. Daniel's mouth dried. Maybe one of the hikers. Lane cut him off with sharp look. Hikers don't lose their scalp and crawl screaming through your woods. Daniel tensed. "You implying something?" "I'm implying you're nervous," Lane said. "And you weren't earlier." Daniel said nothing. His pulse beat hard in his throat. Lane continued. "You know this land better than anyone. You know every ridge, every creek, every path. You saying I'm responsible?" Daniel snapped. "I'm saying people in this town don't just disappear without someone helping it happen." The two men stared at each other, an old rivalry reigniting like dry brush. But before either could speak, a branch snapped sharply to their right. Both whipped around. A figure lurched between the trees, small, hunched, dragging a mangled leg. The light of Lane's flashlight caught the pale stretch of an exposed skull, where chunks of hair were missing. Daniel staggered back. "Holy!" Lane lunged forward. "Hey! Stop! Stay where you are." But the figure didn't stop, didn't speak, didn't even acknowledge them. It moved like instinct alone propelled it. Lane jogged forward, gun holstered but hand hovering close. "Sir? Ma'am? Talk to me." Then the figure crumpled, collapsing face down in the mud. Daniel hesitated, every part of him screaming to turn and run the opposite direction. But Lane was already kneeling beside the body. "Alive," Lane muttered. "Barely." A young man, maybe 22, his skin ghost pale, eyes glassy and half open. Blood streaked down his neck. His hair was matted with mud and pine needles. And at the back of his head, a gaping wound. Daniel's stomach twisted. Lane pressed 2 fingers to the young man's throat. "Pulse is weak. We need to get him help now." "What about the scream we heard?" Daniel asked, his voice thin. Lane didn't answer immediately. Then, that wasn't him. A cold gust swept through the trees, carrying with a sound like distant, ragged breathing. Daniel shivered. Lane reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff Lane. I need emergency." Static. He tried again. More static. The third try made Daniel's skin crawl. A voice whispered back through static. Faint. High-pitched. Not human. Lane shut off the radio instantly, breathing hard. Daniel whispered. "What the hell was that?" "Interference." Lane said too fast. Daniel didn't believe him. Lane didn't believe himself. The young man stirred weakly, his lips parting. "Help me." Lane leaned in. "Who did this?" The young man's fingers twitched. He tried to lift his hand, pointing toward the north ridge, but his body convulsed. His arm fell. His chest lifted once sharply, then stilled. Lane swore violently and slammed his fist into the ground. Daniel staggered back, eyes wide, breath shaking. The forest suddenly felt too tight, the trees closing in like a cage. Lane finally rose, breath ragged, soaked through with rain and sweat. "No one dies on my watch," he muttered. Daniel whispered, "What now?" Lane turned toward the ridge the young man had tried to indicate. We keep going. Daniel froze. What? No, Lane, we go back. We get help. We tell Martha. Lane rounded on him, eyes blazing. Your dog already brought home part of a human head. You want to leave whoever did this wandering around your property. Daniel clenched his jaw. Rain trickled down the side of his face, mixing with sweat. Lane didn't wait for an answer. He turned and started up the ridge. The dark swallowed him. Daniel cursed softly, then followed. Back at the house, Martha paced the porch, fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. The rain had thinned to a mist, but the tension in the air felt heavier than ever. Duke sniffed the air, low growls vibrating in his chest. Please don't start, Martha whispered. I can't take more of this tonight. But Duke wasn't growling at the woods anymore. He was growling at the house. His gaze fixed on the hallway window, dark, partially open, slow curtain swaying. A chill crawled across Martha's skin. She stepped inside the house. The air felt wrong. Too still, too cold. She flipped on the hallway light. Nothing unusual. Just the photos of her and Daniel from years ago. Back when he smiled more. Back when he didn't lie so easily. Duke growled again, stalking past her, nose low. What is it? She whispered. He stopped at the door to Daniel's small workshop. The door stood slightly ajar. Daniel always locked it. Martha's breath caught. She pushed it open slowly, her hand trembling. The light flicked on. The room smelled faintly of oil, pine, and something metallic. His tools were neatly hung, his workbench ordered. Nothing broken, nothing out of place, except on the table lay a folded, mud-stained tarp. She moved closer. When she lifted the corner, her heart stopped. A torn jacket lay inside. A hiking jacket, bright red. She had seen that same jacket on the flyer pinned up outside the grocery store. The missing hiker's clothes. Her pulse spiked. Daniel, she whispered, what have you done? But Duke suddenly snapped his head toward the doorway, ears sharp, footsteps outside, slow, heavy, growing closer. Her blood iced. Daniel, she called instinctively. No answer. The footsteps moved past a window, paused, turned. Someone was circling the house. Duke barked, lips pulling back, teeth bared. Martha backed away from the door, breath coming in shallow gasps. She grabbed the nearest thing, a screwdriver from Daniel's bench, and held it like a weapon. The footsteps stopped at the porch. Then 3 slow knocks. Martha froze. Then a voice, hoarse, trembling, broken, called through the rain. Help, please. Not Daniel. Not Lane. A stranger. Or worse. Someone barely human. Duke stood rigid, every muscle coiled to strike. Martha whispered, God help me. She stepped toward the door. Up on the ridge, Lane and Daniel climbed steadily, the trees thinning as the land rose. The cold bit harder here, wind slicing through wet clothes. Daniel finally spoke. Lane, what if Martha hears something? What if... Lane cut him off. She's safer at home than out here. Daniel wasn't convinced. Neither was Lane. At the top of the ridge, the trees opened into a small clearing. The moon pushed weakly through the clouds, enough to reveal something sprawled in the tall grass. Daniel's breath hitched. Is that... Lane knelt beside it and lifted the object. A bag. Torn. Soaked. Stained with dark brown streaks. He unzipped it. Inside lay a crack phone, a map of Brindle Hollow, a notebook, and, at the bottom, a photograph. Lane pulled it out. Daniel leaned over his shoulder, and the blood drained from his face. It was a photo of Daniel, standing with someone in the woods. Someone whose face had been violently scratched out. Lane stared hard at Daniel. Now would be a good time to tell me what the hell you've been doing in these woods. Daniel's jaw clenched. That photo. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. Daniel opened his mouth. A shriek tore through the woods, closer this time, ripping the night apart. But it wasn't fear. It was rage. Lane drew his gun instantly. Daniel whispered, What is that? A figure burst from the trees. Fast. Silent. and running straight toward them. The figure rushed at them so fast the wind arrived before the body did. Cold, slicing, violent. Lane barely had time to raise his gun before it collided with him, knocking him backward into wet dirt. Daniel stumbled sideways, slipping on the slick grass, adrenaline blasting through him. Lane grunted, wrestling the thing, pinning him down. "Daniel, help!" Daniel hesitated only a blink, but it was enough to betray him. Enough for Lane to see, even in the dark, the fear that wasn't just fear, guilt rising like bile. The figure let out a guttural, animalistic sound and swung a mangled arm toward Lane's throat. Lane rolled, mud splashing across his face, and fired once into the air, more warning than aim. The flash of light illuminated the creature for a split second. A man, or what was left of one. Half his scalp was missing. His jaw hung slightly askew, one eye swollen shut, one pupil blown wide in shock or terror, or whatever had hollowed him on the ridge. Daniel's stomach heaved. Jesus. Lane fired again. This time the creature staggered but didn't fall. Instead, it lunged toward the trees, running on pure instinct, vanishing between the pines like a ghost desperate to flee the living. Lane scrambled to his feet, coughing, wiping mud off his cheek. He was one of them, one of the missing hikers. Daniel stared at the direction the man fled. He didn't even look fully alive. Lane holstered his gun and turned sharply to Daniel. "Tell me the truth now. What have you been doing out here at night?" "I haven't." "Don't lie to me." Lane snapped, stepping closer. "Your wife found that red jacket in your workshop, the missing hiker's jacket." Daniel froze. Lane's jaw tightened. "You didn't think I'd patrol near your place? That I wouldn't see your workshop lights on past midnight these last few weeks." Daniel opened his mouth, closed it, then ran a shaking hand through his hair. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." Daniel backed away slightly, rain dripping off his chin. "I didn't hurt anyone, Lane. I swear on Martha. But someone came to me, someone desperate, someone scared." He swallowed, trembling. "And I tried to help. I shouldn't have. I know I shouldn't have." Lane's eyes narrowed. "Who?" But Daniel didn't answer. Not because he wouldn't, because something behind Lane stirred. A branch twisted, leaves shifted, breath exhaled, slow, uneven. Then, from the trees, a voice, weak, unfamiliar. "Please help me." Lane spun, lifted his gun. A woman staggered into the clearing, soaked, shivering, barefoot. Her clothes were torn, her hair matted with sticks and mud. She looked half-starved, half-feral, barely conscious. Daniel's heart crashed. "One of the hikers?" She nodded weakly. Lane took a step forward. "Ma'am, you're safe now." "What happened? Who attacked you?" She swayed, gripping her ribs. Her eyes locked onto Daniel, widening with unmistakable terror. It was him. Lane stiffened and swung toward Daniel, so fast the sheriff's boots skidded in the mud. Daniel's blood iced. No, she's mistaken." "She's not," the woman croaked. You brought him. You led him to us." Lane's hand shot to his cuffs. Daniel backed away, breath ragged. "Lane, listen. Don't move." Daniel took another step back. Lane raised his gun. "I said don't move." But Daniel bolted. Lane cursed and sprinted after him, vanishing into the trees. The wounded woman collapsed to her knees, clutching her head, sobbing uncontrollably. Back at the Hale house, Martha inched closer to the front door, screwdriver trembling in her hand. Duke stood ready beside her. No wagging tail now, no friendly warmth. Just instinct and teeth. She swallowed the lump in her throat and whispered to the wood, "Who's there?" A pause. Then, "Ma'am, please help." The voice was so broken it stopped her breath. She opened the door 2 inches. Chain still locked. A young girl stood on the porch, drenched, barefoot, shaking violently. Maybe 16, maybe younger. Her face was streaked with mud and tears. Duke's growl dropped to a low rumble, not aimed at her, but the woods behind her. Martha unlocked the chain and pulled the girl inside. "Oh, God, sweetheart, sit Sit. What happened? Are you hurt? The girl collapsed on the hallway rug, arms wrapped around herself as if her bones were freezing from the inside out. They were chasing us, she whispered. They hurt him. They hurt all of us. Martha knelt beside her. Who? Who hurt you? The girl didn't answer. Instead, she looked around the house with wild, darting eyes. Where's Daniel? She whispered. Martha blinked. You know my husband? The girl's lip trembled. He told us he could help. Martha's heart fell into her stomach. What do you mean? Before the girl could speak, something slammed against a window, a shadow sliding fast across the glass. Duke lunged and barked savagely. Martha jerked backward. What was that? The girl curled into the wall, shaking. He followed me. Who followed you? But the girl just cried harder. Martha stood, gripping the screwdriver tighter. Her pulse hammered in her neck. She stepped toward the window, just enough to see out. Rain, woods, darkness. Then, movement. Someone stood at the tree line, watching the house. Not Lane, not Daniel. Someone else. Martha stumbled back from the window, breath shuddering out of her chest. Duke's barks deepened, his body coiled. Another knock. Harder, more urgent. Martha grabbed the girl's hand. Hide. Now. She shoved her into the pantry and closed the door gently. Duke sprinted to the foyer, barking so hard his front paws left the floor. 3 more knocks rattled the door. Then Lane's voice. Martha, open up, it's me. Relief flooded her so fast her knees nearly gave out. She rushed forward and froze an inch before the door. Duke wasn't coming. Duke was still barking like the voice wasn't Lane's. Martha, the voice repeated. But something was wrong. Lane didn't sound breathless from running. Didn't sound wet from rain. Didn't sound like the man chasing Daniel through the forest. Martha tightened her grip on the screwdriver. Say, Duke's name, she whispered toward the door. Silence. Then, he ain't here right now, Martha. Her blood turned to ice. The voice changed, dropped lower, colder. Not Lane's, not even close. Something clawed down the outside of the door, fingernails or something worse, scratching slowly across the wood. Martha backed away, trembling. Duke pressed in front of her, trembling with rage. A new voice whispered through the crack under the door. Your husband told me you'd be alone tonight. Martha's vision tunneled. Daniel, what did you get us into? The porch creaked as the shadow outside moved away. Not leaving, circling, hunting. Duke bolted for the back of the house, barking wildly. Martha followed, heart pounding, screwdriver tight in her grip. She reached the back hallway window and nearly screamed. A man stood a foot from the glass, his scalp torn, his skin gray with shock, his eyes wild and starving, blood dripping down his temple. One of the hikers, the one Duke found, and he was staring straight at her. He lifted one hand and pressed it to the window, blood smearing downward in a trembling streak. His lips moved. What he brought home. Martha's chest seized. W what? The man swallowed, body shaking violently. He didn't bring a piece of us. He leaned closer, breath fogging the glass. He brought what he stole from him. Her heart stumbled. Then the hiker said one last thing. Before your husband helped him finish it. The man collapsed outside the window, body twisting unnaturally, and Martha stumbled back in horror. No, that can't be true. Daniel wouldn't. But something inside her already knew. Daniel had lied, hidden, protected someone. Someone dangerous. Someone not far behind. Duke barked again, this time from the front of the house. Something slammed into the porch railing. Heavy, solid, too strong for a person staggering. The girl screamed from the pantry. The front door cracked. Then again, harder. The chain snapped. The hinges bent inward. Martha grabbed Duke's collar, but he tore free and charged toward the collapsing doorway just as the door burst open. A man stumbled inside, drenched in rain and mud, gun drawn, breathing in sharp gasps. Daniel. Martha nearly fell with relief. Daniel, thank God. But Duke didn't run to him. Duke growled, backed up, snarled. Daniel's face contorted. Boys, stop, what the hell? Martha froze. Duke's never growled at you before. Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he locked the front door, panting hard, and grabbed Martha's shoulders. We have to go. Now. What happened? Who's out there? Daniel wouldn't meet her eyes. I tried to stop it. I tried to fix it. Fix what? The deal I made. Martha's knees weakened. Daniel, what deal? But before he could explain, someone crashed through the window. Lane, bleeding, mud-covered, gun lost somewhere in the yard. He grabbed Daniel by the collar and slammed him into the wall. You son of a... Don't let him move, Martha. Daniel struggled, eyes wide. Lane, listen. Lane, punch him hard across the jaw. I know what you did. Stop. Martha screamed, but neither man stopped. Lane pinned Daniel harder. Where is he? Where's the man you've been hiding? The one you let into these woods. The one who killed him? Daniel spat blood. I didn't let him. He forced me. He said he'd hurt Martha if I didn't help. Lane shoved him again. You brought him supplies. You hid his bag. You hid those hikers when they ran from him. You did everything but hand them over yourself. The girl in the pantry sobbed louder. Duke barked. Rain slammed against the broken window, and Martha's world tilted violently. Daniel, she whispered. You helped him? Daniel squeezed his eyes shut. I thought I could control it. I thought if I kept him fed, kept him calm. Fed? Lane snapped. Jesus Christ, he's not an animal, he's a killer. Daniel lunged, shoving Lane away, tears mixing with blood. I did it to save you, Martha. The house shook. All three froze. A heavy, dragging footstep entered the hallway. Then another. Then the shadow came into view. Tall, broad, limbs shaking with injury or hunger, head half-scalped, eyes empty and ravenous. Not a hiker. Not anymore. Something between man and monster and desperation. Duke snarled, teeth bared. Lane raised his fists. Daniel whispered, Don't hurt him. He's not himself. Martha looked at the creature, then at her husband, then at Duke, who, without hesitation, placed himself between Martha and the monster. She understood everything at once. What Duke had brought home wasn't a warning. It was evidence. Evidence Daniel tried to hide. Evidence of what he'd been doing, who he'd been protecting, who he'd been feeding in the dark. Martha stepped forward, tears blurring her vision. Daniel, he turned, broken. Martha, please. No. Her voice hardened. You chose him over us. Daniel's face shattered with guilt. Lane charged first. The creature lunged. Duke leapt. Martha screamed. The hallway erupted in violence. And when the struggle ended, bloody, breathless, devastating, only the truth remained in the shattered silence of the Hale house. The sun rose slow and cold the next morning. Sheriff Lane, bruised and limping, sat on the back porch steps, staring at the tree line as EMTs carried the creature's lifeless body down toward the road. The girl sat wrapped in blankets beside a medic, and Duke, faithful, exhausted, rested his head in Martha's lap, tail still and eyes half closed. Martha looked down at the dog. You protected us, she whispered. Duke sighed softly, nuzzling her hand. Lane approached, removing his hat. He saved your life. Martha nodded. He always knew, before any of us. Lane hesitated. Daniel made mistakes, big ones, but he wasn't evil, just afraid, and he thought he was doing what he had to. Martha closed her eyes. I know. They sat in silence for a long time, the quiet morning settling around them like a long exhale after a storm. Finally, Lane spoke again, soft, not pushing, not demanding. If you ever feel like talking or just not being alone, you're welcome at the station. Martha offered a faint, grateful smile. I might take you up on that. When the last of the emergency vehicles pulled away, the forest was still again. The house was broken, but the silence was peaceful now, not lurking, not hiding anything. Martha scratched Duke behind the ears. "We're okay," she whispered. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't joy. Just a quiet resolution. A promise to move forward. To heal. To remember the moment everything nearly broke. And the dog who brought the truth home in his jaws.